Okay, so in the last video we went through President Ford and we made it to Carter and only his domestic policy. So now we're going to look at his foreign policy, things how Carter's going to react with the outside world, okay? Israel was created as a homeland for Jewish people by the UN in 1948. The United States strongly supports Israel and a pro-Western democracy surrounded by Islamic nations that intended harm. So we're really tight with Israel. It is one of the reasons that we face Islamic terrorism. Okay, so understand that Israel and the Arab world. So that's that little blue country right here. If you can see it, it's hard to see it, but there's a blue country on that where it says the Arab world. So it's surrounded by Arabs that don't like it, and you have to understand it because there used to be Palestinians living in Israel, and the UN pretty much just said whatever with those people and allowed Israel to become a country, and it's because they felt a lot of sympathy towards them after what the Nazis did to the Jewish people during World War II. Anyways, so Egypt and Israel have fought several wars since Israel was created. They keep trying to invade Israel and destroy it, but because Israel has all of our weapons, they're very successful. Okay, President Carter arranged a meeting between Egypt's Anwar Sadat, which is that dude on the left of him right there, and Israel's Menachem Begin. Okay, and so he's going to try to get them to come to a peace agreement. Face-to-face negotiations produced the Camp David Accords, ending 30 years of war between the two nations. And that's an important thing that they're going to want you to know about. So let's go ahead and take a look. Real quick video of them signing this stuff.
The document that we will sign is entitled A Framework for Peace in the Middle East, agreed at Camp David. And the text of these two documents will be released tomorrow. The documents will be signed by President Sadat and Prime Minister Begin, and it will be witnessed by me. We have to exchange 3 documents, so we'll all sign 3 times for this one. I might say that the first document is quite comprehensive in nature, encompassing a framework by which Israel can later negotiate peace treaties between herself and Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, as well as the outline of this document that we will now sign. And as you will later see in studying the documents, it also provides for the realization of the hopes and dreams of the people who live in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and will assure Israel peace in the generations ahead. This second document is the one relating to a framework for a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. And this is a document that calls for the completion of the peace treaty negotiations within 3 months. And I have noticed the challenge extended by these two gentlemen to each other, and that they will complete within 3 months. I might say that this document encompasses almost all of the issues between the two countries and resolves those issues. A few lines remain to be drawn on maps, and the question of the settlements is to be resolved. Other than that, most of the major issues are resolved already in this document, and we will now sign this document as well.
Okay, so that's them signing documents which ended, 30 years of war. So it's a very important event, the Camp David Accords. Camp David is kind of a retreat for presidents that they're allowed to use. Since it brought this part up really quick, just let me show you. In '67, when Israel first came out, that's Israel right there. Okay, that dark brown. Okay, and the rest, or excuse me. These are the Palestinians, okay? And multiple wars have been invaded. Long story short, I wish I would have put that picture in there, but Israel's gotten bigger every time they're invaded because of the weaponry that they get from us. Okay, so Carter continued with Nixon's policy of détente with the Soviet Union until 1979, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Détente was Nixon's his policy towards communism, which means that we're still containing it, but we start to actually interact with the Soviet leaders. For example, Nixon was the first president to be in China since they had become communist in '49. He also started to meet with Khrushchev and go visit the Soviet Union. So it's a little bit more mature than previous, just ignoring countries because they're communist, okay? But when they invade Afghanistan in '79, he's going to react by boycotting the 1980 Olympic Games. So President Carter stopped selling grain to the Soviets, and the United States boycotted the 1980 Olympic Games held in Moscow. President Carter also postponed signing a new arms control agreement known as SALT II, which was a strategic arms limitation talk. So this was going to be a second round and added more good stuff. But anyways, so we're gonna watch a video really quick, because when you train to become an Olympic athlete, it's not easy, and the older you get, everyone should understand that the less your chances are returning. But anyways, let's just look at really quick how these Olympic athletes, how they felt about the boycott.
Very deeply affected by the U.S. boycott of the Moscow Olympics. Very tough position these young people are in. They have been training for this all their lives, yet they do indeed have a patriotic duty, and in fact, some of them are a little young for this to come to them. Here's some opinions on the boycott.
The fact that we're not going to the Olympics hasn't really deterred my training. I've made sure that I think through this Olympic Games and hope to prepare for another one. So it hasn't affected me too much, but I know for some of the other athletes it's been very difficult to train for this, knowing that we will not be going to the Olympic Games.
Well, it's really hard for me to accept the boycott, I guess because I'm selfish, because I've been training for it. But I guess our president felt this was the best thing for us to do, so we have to follow him.
The Olympic boycott has kind of hindered my performance in a way that when it first was announced, I was kind of really disappointed, because the Olympics was my last opportunity to compete in a big major meet. And so it has hindered my performance to a sense, but this last meet, or this last month, I've got motivated quite a bit because I realized I want to go out being in the top 6.
Well, I'm very disappointed, but I feel that it's probably the only thing that our country can do as a unit. And I'm very upset with what the Russians did, and I'm sorry that we have to look like the bad ones. And
We do not mean to belabor the boycott issue, but think back to when you were 13 and 14 years old. How much would you have understood if someone had told you you couldn't get a chance at your dream because a nation had invaded Afghanistan? It's kind of mind-boggling at this point, Charlie, when you consider the age of these people we're watching tonight.
That's a good point. Most of those kids probably didn't even know where Afghanistan was. Okay? So the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan is what leads to the boycott. So let's take a look at that. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was a 10-year war which wreaked incredible destruction on Afghanistan. The war started December 24th, Christmas Eve, 1979. This was the third proxy war of the Cold War. That's important to understand. The first one was the Korean War. Okay? Korea was divided by the 38th parallel afterwards. Okay? So nothing changed. North Korea remains communist. South Korea remains capitalist democratic. Then the next proxy war was the Vietnam War. From 55 to 75. Now, did we have troops there the whole time? No. When 55, we had just sent advisors to help train up the South Vietnamese army to help themselves. But once we realized they couldn't do it, that's when we sent American troops. Okay? But the Soviets, both in the Korean and Vietnamese War, were supporting the communist factions of North Vietnam and North Korea. And so when they invade Afghanistan, this is going to be payback for Vietnam. We lost 58,000 Americans during Vietnam. This is definitely going to be payback. So anyways, the Soviet troops ultimately withdrew from the area between May 15th, 1988 and February 2nd, 1989. There's a lot more on this during the Reagan presidency, because this is it's a long war, and the majority of American involvement is not going to be until the mid to later years of the war. And so if you want to check out where you should check out the Reagan video to hear more about that. Okay, so the Iranian Revolution. Actually, I'm going to stop and make a whole nother video because this is going to be the last thing we're going to talk about. And also, I don't want to have to pause it in the middle of the lesson, so we'll stop here and pick up on the next video.